What if I told you that an artificial intelligence can look at a company's financial statements and predict whether that stock will beat the S&P 500? Sounds crazy, right? Well, that's exactly what I've been working on. Training a neural network to find stocks with the highest chance of outperforming the market. But before we dive into the results, let me quickly explain in the simplest way possible what a neural network actually is. Think of it like this. Imagine you are hiring a super smart intern. At first, this intern knows nothing. You give them examples, tons of examples of companies, their financials, and whether they perform better than the S&P 500 later on. Over time, the intern learns patterns. They start to see, oh, when companies with this kind of revenue growth, this kind of balance sheet appear, they usually beat the market. That's basically what a neural network does. It's a type of AI that tries to learn from history, spotting patterns humans usually can't see. Here's the challenge. Most investors know the S&P 500 is a safe benchmark. It's the standard everyone uses to measure performance. If you just buy the index and hold for years, you'll probably do fine. Historically, it's returned around 10% annually. But here's the $1 million question. Can we find individual stocks that consistently beat the S&P 500? That's very hard. Even professional fund managers struggle with it. And most retail investors, people like you and me, don't have the tools or the time to analyze hundreds of companies in detail. That's why I wanted to test if artificial intelligence, specifically deep learning, could give us an edge. So here is what I did. I collected a huge amount of data, financial statements and stock prices for companies in the S&P 500 from 2005 all the way to 2025. That includes the 2008 financial crisis, the COVID-19 crash, and more. I pulled balance sheets, income statements, cash flow reports, basically the raw fundamentals that real investors look at. Then I matched that data with the stock prices to see if a company later outperformed the index. I cleaned the data, handled missing values, and built a dataset where each row basically said, here's the financial profile of a company at a certain time. Did it beat the S&P 500 in the next couple of years? Yes or no? That became the training ground for my neural network. Now, training a neural network is like teaching that intern that I mentioned earlier. I fed it thousands of examples of companies and outcomes. The AI started adjusting itself, like trial and error, until it became pretty good at recognizing what kinds of companies are most likely to outperform the market. So what happened? Well, the results were honestly exciting. Historically, only a small portion of S&P 500 stocks managed to beat the index over periods longer than 2 years. So, if you were picking randomly, your chances of choosing a winner would be pretty low. But what about my neural network? When it selected the top stock, it was right about 75% of the time. That's a huge improvement over random. And when I simulated portfolios, say the top 3 or top 5 picks, it consistently outperformed the S&P 500. In a 10-year test period, the S&P 500 grew about 142%. That's roughly 10% per year. And my AI's top picks over 400%, or about 16% per year. That's almost 3 times the total return. Now, of course, nothing is guaranteed in the stock market. But these results show that AI really can help retail investors make smarter choices. So, what about today? Now that the Q2 2025 results are out, I ran the model for this quarter, and guess which stock came out on top? NVIDIA. No surprise, right? With the explosion of AI, NVIDIA has been the center of it all. But here is the interesting part. My model doesn't know anything about what NVIDIA does in the news or any hype around it. It doesn't read articles or track announcements. All it sees are the fundamentals and historical price patterns. And based on that, it identified NVIDIA as the top pick. That doesn't mean you should put all your money in NVIDIA. Investing always carries risk. And just to be clear, this isn't a recommendation to buy NVIDIA or any other stock. I'm simply showing what the model predicts based on historical data and fundamentals, which is exactly why this is so useful for people like us, retail investors. Most of us don't have access to Wall Street research teams. We don't have hours a day to dig into hundreds of financial statements. But with tools like this, AI models trained on decades of data, we can level the playing field a little bit. It doesn't mean the AI will always be right. But if it can consistently tilt the odds in our favor, even by 10, 20, or 30%, that could make a huge difference over the long run. So to wrap it up, I built a neural network to see if it could spot stocks that beat the S&P 500. The results show it really does have predictive power, especially when looking at the top picks. And right now, for this quarter, the model's top prediction is NVIDIA. We are entering a new era where AI isn't just for tech companies, it is becoming a real tool for investors. To see how it works in practice, let me show you how my portfolios are looking. On one side, my main portfolio, where I select stocks based on my experience and knowledge, and on the other, the portfolio my model chooses. And as you can see, I just bought NVIDIA, exactly as the model suggested. From here, I'll be buying and selling the stocks according to what the model suggests. And we'll see if it really performs as well as it seems in the real world. If you found this interesting, let me know in the comments. Would you trust AI to guide your investments? Or do you still prefer the traditional way of analyzing stocks? Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to follow more AI-driven insights, and I'll see you in the next video.